And ready in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, here we are again at Real Dreams TV. Thanks so much to, and I have to give props again to Carolyn Butts and African Voices, who've been so kind in letting me get on this program and share a little bit of what I think is important in terms of the Black community, our legacy, our history, and just trying to bring other voices to the table and letting folks know who's out there and who's making a difference. I'm not going to waste any more time. We had the brothers on tennis in our first part, and thankfully Kenneth, Bryce, and Isaac are still with us. They're going to stay throughout this segment because we're also going to be talking about HBCUs, and they're both members from that illustrious alumna. And we've got another alumna in George Henry who's here with us, and I couldn't be happier that George is joining us and looking very distingué. You're looking sharp there, George.
I got to represent, you know.
Needless to say, NCCU in the house from North Carolina, and he is the new head coach this year of Bethune-Cookman College, so and head coach of the tennis program there. So big kudos. I have to introduce my man from London, Nigerian-born, Yoruba tribe. I hope I said that right. Ahmed, Sule, thank you so much for joining us from a long ways away. I know it's a little later there, but appreciate you. Ahmed has done some amazing, amazing work in terms of writing about the sport of tennis. He's a financial analyst. That's his day job, but he's writing about the sport of tennis. And he has been going to, I think it's 25?
25 Grand Slam finals, yeah. 25, yeah.
I mean, look, I'm going to stop talking in a second here. We're going to jumpstart things essentially with talking about something that George and I were kicking around and talking about for a few months, and all of a sudden I get this information from Ahmed saying, hey, we've been actually nominating Richard Williams and Oracene Price for the International Tennis Hall of Fame. And I'm like, is this guy he got a listening device in my room or what? How did he know we've been talking about this? Ahmed, please give us a quick summary of what you and your colleague, Mikeson, pursued in 2017.
Yeah, so what happened was in 2017, we started looking at the International Tennis Hall of Fame, and we noticed that they had different categories. So they had the players category, the contributors category, and the wheelchair category. So when we looked at the contributors category, we noticed that it had members including the inductees comprised of journalists, broadcasters, administrators, photographers, and we looked at it and we found out that it was a bit whitewashed. There were 44 inductees, and there was only one black person, Dr. Johnson. So then we looked at the criteria for membership, and we then found out that based on the criteria, it says that they need someone who has exhibited, first of all, they need a pioneer, visionary, and someone who has had a transcendent impact on the sport of tennis. They said they needed someone above the age of 65, and they needed someone that has shown integrity, sportsmanship, and positive character. And we then thought that, hang on a second, Richard and Oracene both meet those criteria. So in February 2017, we decided to nominate them. And in our nomination paper, what we did was we said that no one has contributed to the game of tennis more than Richard and Oracene. First of all, they changed the game of tennis. And apart from producing Serena and Williams and coaching them to be tennis champions, they've also had an impact on bringing different demographics to the sport. So like, I'll give my background. I was born in England, but I'm a Nigerian. So I grew up in Nigeria most of my life. And I used to watch tennis, even Lendo, Andrea Gassi. Then in the 90s, I started seeing some little girls wearing beads. That just piqued my interest. I then became an active tennis fan. And when I relocated to Nigeria, to England, to London in 2000, around 2007, a friend of mine said, oh, let's go to Wimbledon. So we went to Wimbledon, and we didn't have any tickets. So I went to go and see the steward and said, oh, can I go into center court? And he said, yes, you can go into center court. So I went into center court, And guess who was playing? Serena Williams. She was playing Hannah Tuchova. And in that match, she won the first set. Then she injured her leg and she couldn't walk. She was hopping. And after that, she lost the second set. And despite the fact that she was hopping, she won the match. And from that moment on, I just became a Williams fan. I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. And through the impact of Richard and Orison, they brought a different demographic into the sport. I have so many of my friends in Nigeria, in England, who go to Wimbledon just because of the Williams sisters. So that's one aspect. And also, you look at how they've introduced a new generation or inspired a new generation of female players like Coco, Osaka, Whitney Osigwe, Taylor Townsend. There's so many, So, and I felt that based on that criteria, these people deserve to be on that Hall of Fame. So we submitted our nomination, and 2 days later, February 6th, we got a confirmation from the enshrinement manager that their name will be included as part of the nominees for the 2018 Tennis Hall of Fame. So we were optimistic. Then in July 2017, they changed the rules. They said, effective immediately for the contributors category, it's now going to be a 4-year rotation instead of an annual rotation. And the next time for induction was going to be 2021. So that automatically nullified our nomination. But we felt, okay, we wrote a letter complaining, but they said it is what it is. So what we decided to do was wait. So in November 2019, they opened the ballot again. So me and Mikeson submitted our nominations of Richard and Orison separately, and we nominated them using the same criteria that how they've influenced the sport. Then 2 weeks later, in January 2020, this year, they said, oh, they've changed the rules again, and they've now said that a group can also, people who have come together can also be nominated or inducted. So what we did was we said, okay, can we present a joint nomination of Richard and Orison as one nominee? And they said yes. And we were actually the first people to nominate anybody. So we started following up with them, and we were so confident that they were going to be nominated. Then come October, they announced the ballot. And when the ballot was announced, we were told that the 2 nominees were, I think Dennis
right.
Van Meyer, yes, exactly.
Right.
And
Familiar with, right, sure.
Yes, and the original 9 tennis players. And we were just so disappointed because we felt that it's like every time we nominate Richard, the criteria seems to be, the goalpost seems to be shifted. And I wrote a strongly worded letter to them that, look, based on what's happening now, it means that if we follow your rules, whereby you do it every 4 years, and we look at the time frame between the first inductee and when Dr. Johnson was inducted, based on that, the expected time when Richard and Orison will be nominated will be in the year 2022-05. And by that time, Richard will be 263 years old, and Orison will be 253 years old.
I got to just jump in here quickly. That just so we're clear, if we extrapolate the time frames between the first and the only Black contributor that's in there, we're talking about 200 years before we actually see Richard and Orison inducted. Now, granted, while we think it may never take that long, any time frame is too long, considering the fact that, unfortunately, we know Richard has had some bad periods of health. And I think, as I've said to both George and to Ahmed and to the brothers, I think they're waiting for, unfortunately, Richard to expire himself to pass on before they actually honor him. I've got to let the family know, the audience know, George has intimate relationships with the Williams family. He worked with the girls at 12 and 13 years old at a really crucial time in their development. And he has been a key advisor, an intimate, close advisor to Richard Williams all throughout this period, all throughout this campaign, and was with him, because I know, Ahmed, you've quoted a number of things out of Richard Williams' book from a few years ago, Black and White as I See It. George was right there at those book launches and even substituted for Richard when he couldn't make it to some locations. George, look, we can't say some of the things that we'd like to say on this program, and your intimate knowledge will stay intimate for the time being. But I mean, I know you support this in whole. Please give us, your own thoughts about how this nomination has been treated so far.
I mean, first of all, I want to congratulate you all on the panel. I mean, I'm so proud to be on the same panel. I mean, I wish all of you had been around and involved in tennis over 25 years ago when I was out struggling with other players from HBCUs. Some of my best friends are from Grambling. We're in connection today from over 30-year relationships. So, I mean, Texas Southern, all of them. I mean, Black HBCU tennis really has a greater impact on tennis in this country than I think you all realize. I think Richard, knowing what I know about him, I met him in '94 when I started working with the girls through a mutual friend, a guy named Gerard Jabady, who actually I just got reconnected with. He's living with me here in Daytona Beach now. He moved
and
up
I
from
gotta say, that's a beautiful story because, I mean, this is just, you talk about Thanksgiving, you talk about just the community helping and reaching back. And this brother fell on some very hard times. Needless to say, not to go through too much of it, but for George to, to reconnect with him and pull him in, and just, making, what for some people might be too much of a sacrifice, but just considering the fact that he wanted to extend himself and bring his brother, knowing that the brother had something to contribute still and what they shared in the past. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, George.
Thank you. I mean, it was the least I could do. But I mean, hearing, what's been going on with the, with the induction and, with he and his wife. I mean, to me, Richard opened his home up, opened his family up to me. And his wife, I was very close with them, in the early years. But early on, it just seemed like really the establishment was going to try to whitewash or just not recognize. Really, the establishment really wanted to look at Richard as a buffoon in this tennis thing. But he was fly as a fox. He had a master plan together. He didn't care who was going to be in the way. He was going to do it the way he wanted to do. And it really gave me a lot of confidence and insight on where we stand or what things we need to do as Black people in being successful, in as a professional in tennis. And from that, I've worked with other players, top 50, top 100 players, predominantly Black players that nobody's really heard about. But a lot of them were inspired by the Williams sisters, were inspired by the Williams story. A few years ago when I met Naomi Osaka's father, she was 14, 15 playing in a futures tournament, and I walked up to her father. I met through a mutual friend, and he told me he, patterned what he did after what he thought Richard did, not even knowing, but he just, he had that vision. And that was actually probably about 4 or 5 years before she started making her break and on her way. So, I mean, I believe every child can do this if they have the right support and the right vision and a little bit of luck. So, I mean, to me, Richard and Orsine, they broke the mold. They changed the whole game, the way it's played, the way it's promoted, the way it's done as a profession. And that made a lot of people in this industry uneasy.
Right.
So, I mean, like you give them credit, you give them all this credit now, then you start losing ground in what you basically have control over as an establishment. So I think it's deeply rooted. I don't just think it's by chance or they didn't. He's never going to be able to, do what the guidelines say. Guidelines always are being changed. So, I mean, I think that was just to brush it off and say, hey, we'll weather the storm and we'll wait 40, 50 years before we even have to deal with it. So, like I said, go ahead.
George, I'm sorry. I got to jump in. There's so much to get to here, and I definitely want to get Bryce and Isaac back involved with the conversation. But I just got to say, because we chatted prior to recording, prior to the show, to talk about the fact that I don't know if a lot of people even know who Naomi Osaka's father is, if they know his name. Needless to say, of course, she's taken her mother's name and taken the town that she was born in Japan. And once again, not unlike, I think, how Taylor Townsend was kind of treated by the U.S. tennis establishment. Naomi Osaka wasn't valued enough for her to stay and represent the United States. And her father was prescient enough to say, hey, we're going to take our game to Japan, and maybe we'll get a little more.
I remember before he made that move,
Right.
he told me, he said, my daughters are going to Japan to represent. The mother was back in Japan.
Right.
And you know, hey, he said, because I don't get the respect here in this country. You know, they don't give me financial support. And he explained about the mother, you know, them taking on the mother's name and being Japanese. And he said he was going to utilize that opportunity. And I guess it worked.
No, I mean, it's beautiful. And the best thing, and I'll just put a button on Naomi for now, but it's been just beautiful watching over the last 3-4 years how she's evolved in terms of her representation of her Haitian background. I mean, obviously all the focus has been on Japan, but the mere fact that she's embraced the social justice movement, she's talked about, hey, this is what we do in Haiti. We rebel, we revolt, we stand up for what's right in terms of representing Black people and representing her country folks from Haiti. Bryce, Isaac, I definitely want you guys to chime in just in terms of your feelings about, obviously, I know how much you guys revere Richard Williams, but your thoughts about what the International Tennis Hall of Fame has done in pushing back on those nominations. Bryce, you start.
Well, I mean, I think it's just consistent with this whole topic that we have of, you know, in the U.S., the people of color are always kind of second nature, and we're always kind of pushed to the side, and you know, we always have to fight just to be equal, and that's unfortunate. I applaud, though, Naomi's father for doing what he did, because it's like, you know, U.S., you guys aren't the only game in town here. And obviously it has definitely worked out for them. So props to him for really looking at all of his options and not being afraid to go away from the U.S. because they obviously were not valuing his daughter for what she had.
And just in terms of the feeling about Richard and Oracine being nominated, I'm assuming you guys endorsed that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you listen to any of our podcasts, you know, probably on every other one, we're stating, you know, we want to see Richard Williams get his flowers while he's still here. Sure. And he has done something in the game of tennis that no one has done. And I would, you know, just like George is saying, I remember the days when the sisters first came on, and your Chris Evers and your Tracy Austins and all of them. They were not lovey-dovey about them when, like they are today. They criticized Richard for not having them go through the whole junior program and saying that, you know, they weren't going to know how to win and handle losses once they got to the professional tour. They also were not supportive of their brains and said they were just all power and they could hit the ball hard, but wouldn't give them credit for having strategy and how to come up with a game plan. And, you know, they also talked about how they weren't playing enough. And so they weren't going to make it long in the game because they weren't focused on tennis enough. And you look at it now, all the people they played with are out of the game and they are still in the game. So, you know, people hate on Richard Williams, not just because of what he did, but because he predicted it as well. He told you that this was going to happen, and now they're sick that they actually watched it happen after criticizing him so much in the beginning.
And Isaac, where are you at, bro? Go ahead.
Oh man, I'm in the same spot. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. I mean, it's the truth. I mean, basically, when you have a brother and a sister, because we can't exclude Orsine. The family got out there and they predicted we are going to be number 1 and 2 in the world. We are going to win Grand Slam. We are going to do this. And the establishment was basically like, gone with that. And basically they proved them wrong. And you know how it is. Folk hate being proved wrong. So then they start adjusting their story. Oh, well, we always knew, and oh, we always felt, and all this, that, and the other. No. We understand. And unfortunately, that's what we're again seeing now in the fact that they would then start changing the rules in order to basically block them from moving or getting a nomination into the Tennis Hall of Fame. And there is absolutely no question that Richard Williams and Orsine Price deserve to be in the Tennis Hall of Fame. I mean, there is just absolutely no question. But again, this speaks to how, again, we always got to keep fighting. We always have to keep, there's always that barrier that we have to get over in order for us to get our due. But the one thing I will say, and I was listening to George and Ahmed and what Bryce said, the one thing that I feel like we have this today that we didn't have back in the day is exactly what we're doing right now. That's the media. We have our own media, and we need to make sure that we are getting the message out there so that people are hearing this, because that's the whole thing with the whole George Floyd and everything that happened with the social justice movement. People, they were trying their best to kind of keep it contained, but folks were like, no. They was on Facebook, they were on Twitter. This is how it became so big. And this is kind of what we need to do as it relates to tennis and in regards to Richard and Orsine. We need to make sure that the tennis community understands what's going on. So we need to use the media in order to get this out there, in order to garner the support, to put the pressure on the Tennis Hall of Fame and the establishment to say, you know what you're doing is wrong, and you need to correct it.
Look, unfortunately, this show is only a half hour long. I know we're going to be pressing up against some time. I want to get some other stuff in. Ahmed and George, you guys bring such important perspectives. And Ahmed, you're a financial analyst. I don't even know how you find time to do the writing that you do. This brother has written some really important letters and just done some great research. But I'm going to say the one thing I want to button up this particular piece with is the fact that, as I've spoken to, I think, each of you guys about, if in fact the only Black contributor in the Hall of Fame right now is Dr. Johnson, who deserves to be there, no question about it. But he, Althea Gibson, who I have to say, this is the 70th anniversary for her breaking the color barrier in 1950. Unfortunately, we lost a lot of opportunities for recognition this year because of COVID. We will pursue those goals again for 2021, or whenever Joe and Kamala give us the all clear. We will definitely be back on track with that. But I think you can't look at any of those folks and people who came prior without giving the American Tennis Association, who George played in many of those tournaments, who came up through that system. The American Tennis Association was an absolute critical piece in terms of the development of tennis overall, not just Black tennis, and giving the founders of that organization their due and their induction into the Hall of Fame is the only way to tell the true history of tennis in this country. It's not just about Black tennis, and putting up exhibits is nice, but that's temporary. Those can be taken down. Induction needs to take place, and following Ahmed and Mikeson's lead, we're going to definitely be putting an application in for the ATA founders, and I know you guys would support that. George, I just want to go back to you as we start to talk a little bit about HBCU influence with the game. And look, I'm sorry, before I mention that, I got to just mention, because we talked about it, you were talking about William Washington, who I'm sure a lot of folks don't know who he is. Tell us a little bit about the family that came before the Williams sisters.
And that was another thing I wanted to add, Glenn. Once they establish and they induct Orsine and Mr. Williams, it's going to open up a whole new can of worms. They're going to have to induct quite a few other people. I mean, one of the ones I learned from was William Washington, he trained out of the same site down at Rick Macy's facility, Lavers Academy, during the same time Venus and Serena were training. When we were all there together, 2 or 3 courts down. I remember demonstrating at the U.S. Open in front of the main gate the year before and the year of when the new stadium was built, when it was named Billie Jean King. So there's a lot of history that is out there that's never been, never been exposed, never been told. And
You know what?
Mr. Washington produced 3 players that were top 100 in the world, 4 professional tennis players within his own family. So, I mean, that's a lot, but he's one of several stories out there.
Well, I'm just going to say, and forgive me for not knowing the girls' names because I knew them at one time, but Malavia Washington, who has stayed connected to the game through media. He was at ESPN a long time ago at the end of the 20th century, and then got into American Express and representing them at the U.S. Open over years. But I do have to say, because we unfortunately just lost this giant, David Dinkins, who, for folks who are not from New York may not know that story. But Mayor Dinkins, the first and only Black mayor who was able to govern over New York, was instrumental in not only securing the Flushing Meadows location for the U.S. Open, but really was painstaking in making sure the Open had the kind of influence and the kind of breadth that it has today. And having a seat in the president's box is not enough in terms of his own recognition. So I want that story to be. I understand we only got 3 minutes left in this segment. We got to talk about HBCUs quickly. I know, George, you're at an HBCU right now. And I just got to ask, Ahmed, are you familiar with the historical Black colleges and universities? Just curious.
Yes, I am. Yes, I've heard about it. Yes. That's the Howard and the Pro.
There have been some great Nigerian players to come and play at HBCU.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I mean, look, we're definitely going to have another show regarding this particular topic and so many others. And like I say, Ahmed, you've opened up a can of worms here with your pursuit. One of the things I'll just say is we're going to be pursuing the International Tennis Hall of Fame and pursuing others who should be supporting HBCUs in terms of the financial, the purse strings. We know.
But I think we also need to put pressure on the ITHOF to change that requirement to an annual requirement rather than 4 years. Exactly. So that we can then bring in all these people. Yeah, it's very important.
No, I mean, you're exactly right. That was so bogus and so transparently, discriminatory in trying to find another goalpost to move. We can't stand for that. And those things have to be called out all the time. Look, I'm being counted down. I'm sorry, guys. This was unfair for me to expect that you guys, and excuse me, I'm losing control here, to expect that we could get so much of this important information done in a 30-minute time span. I love you all. I think you guys are the best. Brothers on Tennis, they have so many platforms. We will post everybody's platform when this show airs. I definitely want to give props to George Henry down at Bethune-Cookman. Thank you so much. Ahmed Sule. Much continued props to you, and continue writing, and we will be chopping it up. Brothers on Tennis, Bryce and Isaac, you guys are amazing. Thank you for giving us another opportunity to talk about platforms that need to be expanded. This was Real Dreams TV. Whatever. This is COVID. I mean, we hopefully will have something a little more intimate the next time we get together. Please keep watching. We'll keep you informed. We love you all. Stay safe, mask up. Georgia, vote for those senators. We need those Senate seats in Georgia. Please, by January 5th. The folks who haven't registered, by December 5th, get registered. I love you, Kim. Thank you for doing this. We'll talk to you guys soon. Everybody stay safe. Peace.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Oh, my God.
Awesome, everybody.
Oh, Kim.